Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. This morning I wanted to continue on with the idea of the loops. Imagine a flower, like a daisy, and how the petals form a circle, and the petals overlap. That's kind of what we have here. So kind of think about that. And how it creates a circle. The conference in Europe is like the first petal. Everybody goes along with their lives for a long time. You know, you can watch the news. You can watch any of the news media that you want. You can watch everyone. You can spend all day long watching what's going on in the news. But it isn't unless you actually look at one specific thing and follow it that you kind of spiral down into that idea that you really are well informed. That's the problem that you have as voters. We don't know necessarily why we're voting for somebody. You know, we'll vote for our favorite candidate, but we don't really know what that favorite candidate is actually doing, what his or her policies are. You know, we just kind of like we're like still like in junior high school when it comes to civics. You know, we're very uninformed people, and that's basically what I wanted to, the frustration that I have keeping track of what's going on. Imagine having to do that for the entire world. Okay, my organization is actually like parallel to the entire world. Each of the 200 members of our independent members are parallel to a country, and a world leader. And so all this is happening, like the world peace plan is like happening like all over the place, and everybody's doing things and they're going different directions. And how do we bring everybody together with this cohesive thought? Well, the power comes from the people. And when we have right now, what we have is a bunch of people all over the world who are frustrated by what's going on out there. Our governments, we've turned power over to our governments, and this is every country. It doesn't matter what form of government it is. We turn our power over to the government, and then we expect the government to solve our problems for us. And they're just people just like everybody else. You know, how can they solve problems when they don't know what the root cause of it is, and when they have their own agenda, and when they have their own prejudice and ulterior motives, and when they're getting in there just to steal money from people? You know, it's because they think that's the way that they're going to get their life, but they don't care anybody else getting their life. Okay, so the first overview idea is that the summits never seem to work. And then, so the conference in Europe is when the people all get together and we decide that the world leaders are going to work to undo the damage they've done, or they're going to start to figure out how to do this. When the power games they're playing stop working. When, you know, I was thinking this morning about the members of Congress who basically supported the idea of the insurrection in some way, whether or not, you know, it was like the picture of Josh Hawley with his hand up in the air, you know, go, you know, this is power, you're demonstrating power. And basically it's like where did you get that idea? It's like he's got an idea for like his own agenda, and he was going to bring in all those 74 million people. Okay, but he's not doing the job that he was supposed to do, which was based on his oath of office. So I'm just using him as an example, but that's kind of where people are. The people are just people, and everybody plays the games. So to bring everybody together, we have to be more informed about what's going on and why it happens and the principles behind it. Now, people who stand on principles a lot of times get slammed, but we're going to introduce project ideas too that benefit people and allow people to come in. So I'm going to go into that in a different level. Right now, I'm just going to follow the loops so that you can understand how it will come back as we go through and become informed about this in our debates, and then we have the understanding about, as voters, as people who are supporting our governments, whatever government that is. Right now we're focused on the United States because first of all, we're a melting pot of, my organization is parallel to all the countries, but the United States is a melting pot of cultures and religions, and if we can bring peace here, then we can bring peace out there. It's the same idea. Our organization, the United States, and then the entire world. 1, 2, 3. We set the principles. We peg the world on a very high level, and then we bring in the United States to be like, we're like the dad, and the United States is like the mom, and all the other countries are like the children. And I'm not talking about the international government. I'm talking about culturally. I'm talking about a melting pot, as opposed to each of the countries being, we're also one of the countries down here. Okay? This is not where the United States is going to be in charge of anything. We're going to be working on undoing the damage that we did by our failed foreign policies, and that will allow the entire world to go up. We're taking the principles, applying the principles, instead of going down into wars or ignoring crises, or we are going to all go up. We're going to cut each of the countries free from the failed foreign policy that put them into a crisis. Okay, the same thing's going to happen over and over again. Like, for example, how about when we purify the legal system and the retired legislators go back and work to undo the damage they've done by coming up with failed laws that are creating chaos in the system, because they don't stand on the principles of sound governance, and they don't address the root cause of the problem. Okay, so the first, as we're going along in this idea, the first one is the conference in Europe. Just to recap this a little bit, the first one is the conference in Europe because it's coming from the people. We are all going to be coming together. Well, we're knowledgeable people, and then we're going to work with the governments, and we're going to encourage them to come together where their agendas, as they hit the point where they can't figure out how to solve the problems, then we are going to help them get out of the abyss. So the first one is the conference. It's going to be a trickle-up idea rather than a trickle-down idea that just never gets down, okay? Just becomes more and more oppressive because the games are just based on diplomacy, which are games of one-upmanship, and basically I'm more important than you are, like the UN. And I'll talk about the why the UN failed in another video. I'll make a note of that. Okay, so if we have the conference in Europe, what will bring the world leaders to a conference? Government proposals. Okay, so what we have is a series of government proposals that explain the problems. I have one that I just sent out to my representative to Congress, and one of them, and he says, and it's called Bridging an Exit Strategy for Iraq to a Global Renaissance. Okay, so if the members of Congress are getting together and saying we have an economic crisis here, the United States, okay, if we do this, it'll lead to this. This is how we can go from this point to this point. I don't have to do anything more than give them the proposals and let them look at it. And then what happens is then they can start to understand why things are working and why things are not working and what's wrong. Like looking at the root cause of the problem. Okay. then what we have is these initial ones are kind of like saying, like if you are going to somebody and saying, what you're doing doesn't really make a lot of sense to most people, and basically saying, you might want to rethink that policy, that doesn't work. This is why it doesn't work. And then you're living your life. Go ahead, continue living your life, but you might want to reconsider this. Okay, so then the government proposals lead to something else. The next loop, and as I said, the loops kind of overlap each other. So when you have one loop, you have like the conference, but the next step you have is, let's say, that allows the government proposals, and the next loop has to do with the publishing idea of it. Okay, I'll explain. So now what we have is, if we have a government proposals, how do we keep the people informed? Do we just put it online and then just expect people? No, you know what? I think a really good idea would be to have the old-fashioned idea of newsletters. And the newsletters are great because what they do is they explain the same thing to the people. This is a mock-up of my first newsletter. I sent newsletters a long time ago, and they were really bad. Like my videos here, they're bad. But they're just me talking to you and explaining to you one-to-one, because I'm used to talking one-on-one to people. I'm in my storage unit, which is my shipping department. It's almost 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm telling you, I woke up, thought, this is what time for me to do this today. So my newsletter, this is a mock-up of it, and I'm explaining, this is the exit strategy for a rock proposal. It has like the executive summary. It explains where people are. It explains where we are in terms of the root cause of the problem. I thought, what would somebody who's busy like me, I'm trying to run my business, and what would I want in my hand that would allow me to understand all of the ideas behind it, including the advisory aspect, the planning aspect of it. I have a list of all the countries when this came out in 2012, people who supported the plan. I have an advertisement in here and actually I probably need to pay to put my advertisement in here. I think that's probably what I have to do. I'm thinking about all this as I go that allows me to pay for this, my organization and my business. I can run an ad. And then the next thing is, if I'm publishing this newsletter, then I can publish the books that I advertise in here. And those are, if you have an overview idea of the project, whenever you go and see something in the news about this idea and the project associated with it, like Oxford and Stonehenge, you understand how it is. You understand an overview idea. People have to have a voice in their government, so I have come up with a very detailed survey. This is online too. This is a 4-page survey that explains, kind of like goes back and explains the whole thing. And then what I have is all the planning ideas for what I have online. So it goes step by step in the proposal. So when you can take this newsletter, which is a different idea than most newsletters will say, well, yeah, this is what we're doing right now, but this is what we're doing right now, but it's going to be overlapping all of these projects, because the first project the first proposal is the exit strategy for Iraq, but simultaneously the constitutional amendment idea is going on. By the time you get done, there'll be like 60, there'll be 8 a year, and then maybe 60 to 65. The first one starts us with the crisis that we're in, the global genocide, and it's going to take us all the way to the global renaissance. So we're going to start at the root, the base crisis in the family, and go all the way to the global renaissance in our newsletters. And you'll understand every step of it. You can take this out 2 years from after you start the subscription, and you'll be able to go through it and understand what's going on. Now, this is like an overview idea. And then what I have been working on is, this came from this box right here, but it isn't necessarily. I have a whole bunch of books. I have probably 100 books little booklets that I've channeled. They're the series booklets. If you ever go on my website, it's at ontherainbowpeacestore.com. Okay, this is the next step in the loops. We have the publishing idea. My cat is up this morning too, and she needs to move. Here, you can sit right over here. Come sit right here. Come sit right here. Okay, sorry. My cat is just part of the family around here. Okay, so if we have the newsletters, then the next thing we have is the books. And so now what we have as informed voters, for example, we're all going to be voting on whether to support this plan for world peace. Me too. I've been working on it a long time, but you still don't set everything until the point where we're going to vote on it. Okay, so to understand all the principles, the application of the principles, and the planning steps and stages, and this is not just, well, we're going to do this. No, we have to understand why we're doing this. So we're going to go deeper into this idea. And I thought, I have all these books, how do I put them together? Then I thought, to put them, people can buy them individually, or they can buy them like in an entire set for this. So if I have, what did I do with my newsletter? Someplace here. Oh, I know what I did with it. Okay, so if I have the newsletter, then the next step is the books. And individually, you can understand the principles, the application of the principles. This is an example of the first set that I'm putting together. It's not finished. Okay, so if you are working with this, then the next step is the books and to understand the principles associated with it. So this is the Power Series. The Exit Strategy for Iraq has the Power Series books. Explains revenge. It explains the 6 principles associated with where true power comes from. It goes from where revenge, people thinking revenge works. How about school shootings? How about if it's a matter of somebody being bullied and then they're going to get revenge because they think that's what happens in the movies? Okay, so step by step, how to get to where true power comes from. How, let's say, somebody who's a 97-pound weakling, my cat is jabbing me here, wants attention. Okay, so that's the Power Series comes from that. How to overcome these are the principles associated with where true power comes from. But then the planning process, then the application of that is a trade book, and it's a manual for peace in this circumstance. And then what I have is the triad books. And in this case, there's the Power of Conquest. This is like the steps associated with it. Like you take a step with the left, right, and then you go straight ahead. So this is, let's say, This has to do with the spiritual ideas behind it. You start with, when you walk, it's like the spiritual ideas. This is the spiritual ideas. Then this one I did with Alexander of Macedonia. This has to do with conquest in terms of the principles, like I said, of getting revenge, and we're going to conquer. This is like what Congress is doing now, fighting between the two sides. We're going to fight. The next one is, but it's not necessarily all of that associated with that. The next one is Unraveling the Past. This is the right idea about it. And Queen Sophie of the Netherlands, I did that with Alexander of Macedonia. This one I did with Queen Sophie of the Netherlands. And what she did was she was one of the people, nobody ever heard of her before, but she was one of the people who, by not doing, she tells us in here, by not doing what she was supposed to do to stand up, she allowed her actions actually triggered the creation of the UN. Like I said, the UN has 5 flaws in it. It's not. It actually causes problems rather than solving problems. So Queen Sophie is coming back and unraveling the past. Okay? She's coming back to undo the damage she's done. Okay? And then the third one is I did with Thomas Aquinas, and he talks about out of the abyss and into life. So like I said, we're going from being in crisis all the way to being out of crisis, at least out of the abyss. That's what our goal is. How do we get out of it? The first set of books are Getting Out of the Crisis series. The first page of the catalog is Getting Out of the Crisis series. It's like an overview idea. We're always going step by step from where we are falling into the abyss to how to get out of the abyss. Step by step. By the time we get done, we're with all the books and understanding all the principles and all the newsletters. What we'll have is a global renaissance. Now, this is just the very beginning of everything. So then what happens is, okay, what about the next step of that? And I'm going to just go through them quickly. The next step is the tent tour. If we have the books, and we're going to be setting up a structure in Brookings, and we're going to be setting, in the town where I live, we're going to be setting up a structure, but we're not really starting here first. We're going to start this area starting very small. We're going to kind of prove it works here. But it's not here that it's going to happen. It's going to be, Brookings is a peaceful place, but we have no power. Okay, on the opposite side of the country, they have power but no peace. So what we have to do is kind of like bring the two sides together, understanding the principles on each side, and then go from there. Okay, so we're going to be going all over the country in the United States and setting up, first of all, with the tent tour, the contingency for this project is that the United States works together to amend the Constitution with an Article 5 Amendment Convention. So somebody else is going to come in. I'm going to keep working on this idea of revenge because me and my family are parallel to Iraq. Okay, so then what's going to happen is that the contingency for this plan is that the people of the United States get together and amend the Constitution to create the layer of government that goes over the top. Now, if I have a plan that goes from the worst case scenario of a global genocide to a global renaissance at the far end of that, okay, what are the alternatives that we have? Now, we're going to be thinking about the alternatives of this. So if we have Donald Trump, all those 74 million people who voted for him wanted a sense of him to create a sense of prosperity, but it's up to us to do it. It's not up to him. No trickle-down ideas. Forget trickle-down ideas because they don't work. People equate money and power, and they don't give up either easily. So that's what I mean, is that the trickle-down idea, they have their own agenda, they go in there, and now what we have to do is hold them accountable. The people in Congress, our president. If they're coming up with programs that don't solve the root cause of the problems, they're making it worse. We have up, down, or straight ahead. Power games, going down into the games, war, civil war. How about genocide? How about greed and massacres? All over the country, all over the world. There are people who are living in governments that are playing power games, the authoritarian people. The racism, the gerrymandering, and denying people votes, these are power games. And then the people who, like Sophie, who didn't react, and now she has to undo the damage she's done. Okay, she didn't come up with a plan that benefited everybody. She just kind of ignored the crisis and went down and set the stage for something that was unpalatable for everybody, not based on this idea. It wasn't enough to stand on the principles. That's why we have to stand on these principles that's in these books. And then we get out of our crisis situation. We have to all understand the games don't work, hit rock bottom, and then rock it out. And then we go on to the next step, and that is the tour, where we start to work with the people in towns, explaining to them what the root cause of the problems are, how to deal with situations, how to bring in the community to create in the community a sense of abundance and working together, instead of everybody going, we're going to shoot each other because we don't like your politics. So the tent tour will bring in a whole bunch of different people. Some will be working to help start the process in their state with other cities, and they're going to be working to do that. Then the next step is going to be if we can do that, if we can unify the states, and then the state goes on and we'll do it state by state, then what we'll do, and also work with the psychics in the group, bring together that. Then we start to bring together, we can demonstrate how to do that on another country. That's when our advisory group comes in. And we'll go with government contracts and do that in other countries. As we're developing this, then it goes on. Then we can come back and purify the legal system and say, if we can solve the problems over there, what do we do here if that didn't work? Got us into trouble in the first place. So then what happens is each of the advocates, those countries become advocates for the government proposal that allowed them to address this issue, and then they go to the conference. They're ready to solve problems on a global basis. We're turning all responsibility over to that government, and then basically, as they advocate for it, they're the people who have all the power. We have none. Then we turn responsibility over to them, and they carry the idea on for creating the international government. And I'll go into that conference in Europe idea in greater depth and how it works. I actually have a website for that too, but I'll talk about it later. You see how this is going to work? Every time it's going to be how to create what you want, step by step along the way. We're going to be taking this, but the projects come off from that. And then what's going to happen is this one has different projects associated with it, and that's setting up a protocol for an international court system. That's where, based on universal law, based on people coming together. So this is going to lead to the first court case, and it'll end the conflict in Iraq. It's an exit strategy for Iraq, and it's the first step. Iraq is going to be the one, and the United States together the United States and Iraq together are going to be advocating for the international court system, that where disputes will be taken off the battlefield and into the courts, and the rest of us will just go along and live our lives any way we want to, building that global renaissance at the far end. We're going to start looking at the principles of the global renaissance as we go around this too. So that's all I wanted to talk about this morning. It's a great way to start a morning. I'm in my storage unit. The first principle of the global renaissance is that everybody has to function from their capacity. And so I kind of consider myself to be the first one of the global renaissance. And I just wanted to share with you how you can be part of it too. Okay, so I hope you like, share, and subscribe, because this is something that everybody needs to hear about. Share it with your family and friends, because if they've voted for Donald Trump and they're expecting him to make America great again or make them prosperous again, it's not going to happen. This is what's going to make America great, is when we stand on all these principles and we understand what the principles are. Okay, so like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.